Hey, welcome to, I don't even know what number episode this is. My name is Laura. I'm the CEO of Overdose Australia. Joining me today is Jodi Irving. She is the Operations Director for APAC. We're both new into our roles. As you guys know, we're streaming on multiple platforms. You're very welcome to ask us questions throughout. Jodi and I are two of the most tech-savvy people at Overdose Digital. We'll be able to work out as the questions fly up. We'll do our best to answer them. The chat today is going to be super casual. We're obviously not talking to our clients. We're talking to each other. But welcome, Jodi. And I want to hear firstly from you what you do at Overdose and what you love most about it.
That's cool. Hey, welcome, Laura. Thanks so much for that. Super excited to chat to you today. Yeah, so my role, I hold a couple of roles actually. I hold the Managing Director role of New Zealand and also the APAC Operations Director role. That's kind of a new role for the business. Essentially, two things. One, the Managing Director role is running the New Zealand operations, right? So making sure that our team are happy, our clients are happy, and essentially we're, running a good, strong business. The Operations Director role is to streamline some of the operations across the APAC region. So we've got offices in New Zealand, offices in Australia and in Singapore. And this role is to help us all operate very similarly. We lean on each other quite a lot. So it's quite important to have, some systems and processes and ways of working that are kind of similar.
Yeah.
Tell me about you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Tell me what I do. Yeah. So I'm also still the Managing Director technically for the Melbourne office.
Yeah.
So similarly, and I started that role 1st of Jan 2019. I was just working it out today. I'd come into the business as the Client Success Director, and the Managing Director position opened up. Back then, a very different business. So I think there was about 20 people in Australia in total. And I'm still very hands-on and very involved with our Melbourne team, our Melbourne clients, and the operation of Melbourne. It's definitely where a big part of my heart is, and I've loved growing that team out and being part of the business through the Melbourne office. Now the newly created CEO role, as we've got 3 offices in Australia now with Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, it's really to get that country experience very consistent for all of our clients, provide pathways to career development for our team. There's nearly 80 in Australia now, and really making sure that Overdose is the best commerce agency in Australia. I'm biased. I think we're kind of pretty much there, but making sure that we continue to grow and evolve as a business, both with our competitive edge and the services that we provide to our clients, but also the environment that we provide to our team. When I first come into Overdose Melbourne, there were 16 of us, 3 of us shareholders, to take it to a business in such a short period of time, to have almost 80, tenfold the amount of clients, so on and so forth, is something that I've found very interesting. I don't think in my wildest dreams would I have seen it go on that sort of growth trajectory, but I'm really excited about leading the country because I think we've got amazing talent and amazing clients. So if I was to say what I love most, it's definitely the people on both sides of the spectrum. I'm a people person. I think you and I joked yesterday, neither of us have technical backgrounds. We're not specialist practitioners in any of the amazing service areas we provide. But I'd love to hear, your background. I know it's very different from ours and how you started at Overdose and the path you took to become Managing Director of the New Zealand business.
Yeah, cool. And I think, super different backgrounds really when, you look at where you come from and me. So I also started in 2019. I think it was August 2019. So a little bit after you. And again, the business, we'll talk about this second, but it was 19 people when I started, and now we're up to plus 50 or so. But my background's a little different. So this is my first ever agency role. I come from retail. So I spent 15 years working in a variety of different retailers, from general merch through to apparel, and even actually in the health and beauty sector. So I kind of cut my teeth when I was, sort of working as a regional in retail. And I thought this is a really cool industry. I loved it. I loved the I love the trading element. I just really love the trading element of retail, and, you know, customers and happy people being happy, and growth and the excitement around that. It's a really can be a really fast-paced industry. But after doing it for about 15 years, I thought, well, what's next? You know, what's the next thing? I still love retail. I don't want to work with retailers. I still love that trading element, but I'm not sure I want to be running a retail business. And it was actually a really good friend of mine, knew Paul, and she introduced me to him and said, hey, you know, go and work for this agency. And I said, no, I've never worked in an agency. I don't know what agency is like. And she said, go have a conversation, go and meet some of the team, which I did. So I had, I think I was trying to count it up yesterday, maybe about 6 rounds of interviews and conversations with a variety of different people at different levels, shareholders, directors. Some, you know, we went for lunch or we went for coffee, and I think then I did a presentation. I think maybe you were on that presentation call as well. Yeah. Which was terrifying at the time. I'll say it was terrifying at the time. But after doing that and putting the work and energy into it, I got to understand the business a bit more. I thought this is a very cool place to be, and it still ticks a lot of boxes for me in terms of, you know, wanting to work with retailers, but in a very cool industry with some amazingly talented people, and that just hooked me in. And so my journey is a little bit different, but I think having a retail background helps somewhat.
I think my family's always been in retail, so I grew up in clothing stores and the such. So I've got that level of empathy, but from an operational standpoint, I certainly didn't have the experience that you come from to understand the expectations of clients, the challenges that they face, and also I think the financial literacy that you get from being in that environment and then translating that to how an agency runs, because agency is very different. You know, it's got its own challenges, and, you know, we are only really selling people and time, not a product per se. The people are our product, and a very valuable one at that, but it does take a different type of skill set. And I've always been quite intrigued, if you look at all the directors and the leaders within this business, at the diversity in the skill sets that we all hold. And I think that's what brings the edge to Overdose as a global agency. It's certainly that diversity and skill set. I would say probably from you, I've learned a tremendous amount on that operational trading mindset and just the financial elements of it, because that was something I just didn't have, and I had to really learn quite quickly. And I think even when we come in as MDs, the support environment or the level of leadership that we had at that time is certainly not as sophisticated and as evolved as it is today. And I think if you're to come in, you know, a lot of the young, particularly women leaders we have now, I think it's impressive that we've got such great balance in the leadership pool, because I was the first female MD. You were certainly only the second. And I think at that time we would have only had 1 or 2 other directors that were female leaders. And not that we're making this because we're both females, a female chat, but I'm really interested to get your take on how you think personally what your leadership style is, but how as a business at Overdose that leadership layer has evolved to cater to more balance, but also age difference, background difference, experience difference, and how that translates to both being an employee at Overdose, but also the benefits that flows onto for clients.
I think it's so I think we did a review of the stats recently, and I think we're literally 50-50 male and female in the business, which I think is fantastic. You know, personally, I really love working with strong leaders, and whether they're male or female, it's all good, right? I think that the leadership team over the last couple of years has grown, really strengthened and grown, and that we've become, you know, my personal style is, I'd say, quite collaborative. So I like to have a chat. What do you think? Let's weigh up the options and then let's make a decision. Let's make that quickly and move forward. And Overdose, the way that we operate allows us to do that, is to, you know, get on, get some, you know, make some decisions and get them done. And I think the style of leadership that we have is like that, but it's also, I'm trying to say, it's very powerful. So we have a lot of room to make decisions. We have a lot of room to, you know, to be our to be the best that we can be. But then we also have, really strong governance in place, so that if we need that support, then it's absolutely there. I know that personally, I've learned heaps from you. So we have definitely have different background and skills, and so I have no qualms in ringing. So what would Laura do here? Let me think what Laura would do. So what I've learned from you, and I've learned some leadership tips from you certainly over the last few years, is that you've got lots of grit. You're really do lead by example. In my experience, you really do, and I really respect that in you.
I think I had a conversation with Todd, and sometimes he's like, how your leadership style is just drag people and run as fast as you can and see people come along with you. He goes, maybe sometimes with this certain individual or this one, just, relax it a bit. And I think that's where I go from you, where that sit back, the collaboration, the asking of the questions, the active listening. I think that's definitely a skill that you have, that I've tried to tune into a little bit more with improving my patience and my active listening skills.
Well, I think you're good. But it's actually, you raised a really good point there. It's that, we have a lot of people in the business who, super talented and aspiring, and they want to move into leadership. And I think that, how we, I guess, behave and how all of our leaders behave is really important. I guess, what are you seeing in terms of the new wave of the OD leaders coming through? What are you kind of seeing at the moment?
I think what they've brought is certainly a sense of system and governance through almost sharing the workload of what was traditionally channeled through the really senior leaders. And so I think from a team and a client perspective, that sharing of the workload and the consistency in the way we're approaching each respective team or each respective new project setup or retained service client onboarding is better. And that's definitely flowing through to the clients and the scalability of our business. I often get questioned when I'm pitching to businesses is, can you take on our business? You have a lot of clients, it's a very impressive list of clients, but do you have the right amount of talent to really dedicate to our business and our goals? And that's a question I can answer with complete comfort, in the sense that, yes, you can have access to me, and all my clients know they can pick up the phone and talk to me at any time, but you are also getting a set of leaders in their own respect that are, if anything, more skilled than me in their respective area. And I'm always a big one for, hire people that are smarter and more talented than you in certain areas. And that's not being self-deprecating about what my skills are. I'm very aware of what my strengths are, but, I try and I think I think probably what excites me most about the new crop of leaders, and hopefully the additional positions and opportunities that we're creating through growth, is the ambition and the enthusiasm for all of our team to grow and develop. Obviously, not everyone can be in a leadership position. It simply doesn't work like that. But I think we're providing an environment where if you follow a certain path and you do the work, you will get rewarded with opportunistic whether it's a new position or growth within your department. We've certainly got that in spades, I think. I do still find it challenging to balance that ambition and giving everyone the right opportunities at the right time based on their particular career point. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, and how you feel about the new crop of leaders and what's next for people, because I think it's something we have to contend with and deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm excited. I look at, the New Zealand business, and I'm super proud of the people that are in there. I'm honoured that I work with some amazing people every day. So, I am for giving people opportunity, because, we've got some incredibly smart, very, very smart people in the business. And things can be learned, right? So, if I think about, my directorship team, my current team, they're phenomenal. And, and then they're bringing their team through, through their seniors and growing their team. So I think, like you, those clients have an immense amount of trust in the leadership group, actually in our team in general, right? And I think that's a testament to how the directors and how their seniors and how everyone in the business actually responds to the kind of leadership that we have, and looks towards giving people opportunities to constantly grow and evolve. So I'm proud of it. I think it's great. We've got a couple of questions. Should we take a question?
Did we get? What do you both pride yourself on the most in terms of being a good leader? Do you want to answer first?
I'll go first. Okay, cool. So for me, it's there's two things. It's integrity and transparency. So for me, and they kind of go hand in hand, right? So it's being as transparent as you can with your team. You know, we all come to work to do a job. And why do we come to work to do a job? And I think it's really important that people know that. And, you know, businesses go through evolution. They go up and they down. You know, every business does, right? So it's when you're up, that's great. Explain why. When you're down, explain why, what's happening. And so I think it's really important to be transparent. And then integrity. So having like self-integrity around the decisions that you make, and, you know, say you'll do something, do it, and just be, just be really comfortable and happy that you're making your decision that feels good for you, because you're sitting within your own integrity, which therefore will always have a good result. That's for me.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think they're great ones. I definitely include integrity within mine. I feel in order to be an effective leader, a respected and a trusted leader, you have to have that at the core. And it is very easy to go down certain paths or lose some of the personal sides to yourself. I've always battled with how much of you show in a position of leadership. And early on, you know, I very much wore my whole heart on my sleeve. And, you know, you probably speak to lots of people about that. And I still do to an extent. I think I've had to learn and mature to maybe taper that down a little bit, so that, you know, you have to be a safe pair of hands. So when you've got 80 people that are relying on you to be paid every month, I think there has to be an element of composure in the sense that they feel safe. I think people really want to feel safe and comfortable in their workplace. I'd say second to that is always leading with an element of empathy and warmth and approachability. I think you can read a leadership book that tells you a million different tips and tricks and different styles. And I think for me, if there's ever a day where someone feels apprehensive to send me a message or book time with me, then I've certainly failed. I'm definitely busy and there's not heaps of gaps in my calendar most weeks, but I'd always like to think that I lead in a way that people know that they've got that access to me to have a conversation or get support if they need it. So, you know, and that's the same with clients, you know, whether they're one of our smaller clients or our biggest client, I want the clients to feel very comfortable in having a conversation, whether it's a good one or maybe something that's challenging them. So, yeah, those two things are probably really important to me in terms of when I try and lead. So definitely. Oh, we got another question. So if you reflect back on your journey to your current roles, what is the best thing you've learned or the best advice you've been given to help guide you into those positions? Well, that's a good question.
That's a great question. You want to go first?
Am I going first this time? Okay, yeah, sure. Look, I think probably the steepest learning curve or the best advice that I've been given, you know, particularly when we were going through rapid growth and I was a very new MD, I had times where I found that quite overwhelming, the sense of responsibility and, you know, you're managing team, there might be escalations, you're selling new business, you're acquiring new clients. And I did find that at times to get the balance of patience and composure, I just didn't nail it. And you try and be everything to everyone and you try and carry the absolutely everything and do it all yourself. And that burnt me out pretty significantly, if I'm being completely honest. And so I had a really good conversation with Todd on the phone one day, and I was pretty stressed out. And he just said, you know, you kind of got to remember we're selling websites. You know, you will always get through this, and there's an element where you have to sort of step away and put the trust in the people that are there to deliver it, and then move on to the next thing and sort of compartmentalize the different focuses. And I know you're a really good one for this, Jodi, in terms of setting the priorities, because you're never going to get through your entire to-do list. They can be quite toxic and overwhelming in a lot of ways. So yeah, setting priorities and keeping your composure and remembering, you know, I think we all have personal lives. You have different challenges, but work is work, and there has to be a boundary set that the world's not going to end because a launch was delayed by 5 days or something like that. So I think just the best piece of advice I got was just take a step back, breathe, chunk it down into the priorities, and take each challenge as it comes, rather than trying to bite off everything and digest it completely alone and in isolation.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's great sound advice for anybody listening. Mine's actually similar, and I think mine happened. It was happening in a few businesses ago, where the business was going through quite an evolution. So what I learned was cadence, which is kind of what you sort of mentioned, so cadence of things to do. And it was going through quite an evolution, and we were bringing in a new warehouse system, bringing in a new point of sale system, bringing in a website, completely migrating the CRM to something else. And I kind of was not long after my tenure starting as the GM that these things are kind of kicking off, and it was just chaos because so many things and so many people are being pulled in so many different ways. And I was like, gosh, my team were breaking, everyone was kind of breaking because that's their normal work and all of this other stuff on the plate as well. I think we were also building a new warehouse at the same time. So it was all kind of like, it was just chaotic. And I just went, oh, stop. We've got to stop. We've got to stop and go. And it's, what are the priorities and what is the cadence and what can we do and what can we, because I didn't want to lose team because there was so much going on. But, we want to do good jobs of what we do. You don't want to do half a job because you've got so many other things on your plate. So cadence, but it took to the team almost breaking to get to that stage. And I never want to go back to that place again. So cadence is really important. Priority setting and cadence is really important. So that was a good question.
That was a great question, T. How does agency differ from other business models, and how does this affect your leadership style? Again, ripper question. I'll start on this. Agency life to other businesses is very different, and it's different in a number of ways, because in a business where you're in that sole business, whether it's say a retail brand, you've got your core set of people you're reporting to, you've got your products, you're selling it. Yes, you've got multiple customers, but they're going through a sense. Put yourself in the situation where you've, say, got 80 active clients, multiple people within each of those 80 clients, multiple different services being provided, multiple different goals and business objectives of each of those respective people. Then you've got the diversity of different teams servicing said different clients. So at any time, you'll have weeks where things are going swimmingly, everyone's happy, there hasn't been any technical issues on websites or whatever it might be. So I think no one day is the same in agency life, and that's probably what I try and prepare people, particularly in a recruitment stage when they haven't come from an agency background, is do you realize there is an intensity to this environment that you cannot predict? And so having that grit, composure, and a willingness to sort of hustle and react based on what's thrown at you. I think we have really good systems to take care of high priority requests and things like that. But there's no world in which we know exactly what's going to happen each day. Now, that excites a lot of people, but if you are a very routine-based person that likes to know what's going to happen each day and best laid plans are executed, then it's not the right environment for you. And so when you're leading, you have to have that at the forefront to go at any moment. And instead of react, you respond. So you can't, the amount of times I'll sit at my computer, see something and go, my initial reaction is explosive or whatever, right? You have to pull yourself back as a leader and go, how do I need to constructively respond to this to help the client or the team member that needs that support? So that's my answer.
Cool. So for me, I guess because I have got a slightly different background to agencies, there's actually two things. And this was quite a big consideration for me when I moved into agencies. To your point, Laura, you've got lots of clients and they do many different things. Some are marketing, some are tech, some are a bunch of other things as well. when you come from I came from client side. When you come from client side, you get to really understand the depth of the business. You understand what's happening in merch. You understand what's happening in logistics, what's happening in HR, all of those sorts of things. You get to understand everything quite at depth. And the levers that you pull have quite a big impact on the overall business, right? And so moving to agency, you've got this much that you can impact, and you don't get to understand the depth in some of the other areas, which is fine, but it's just a difference, right? And so what that meant for me moving into agencies and my leadership style was I don't have the depth of, so I'm not a marketer, I'm not a tech person, I'm not an SEO person, I don't have that depth in those channels. So I really needed to lean on the directors and then the team to say, what would you do? So even though I've got quite a collaborative style, I still really lean on that. So it's probably evolved a little bit more, and massive trust in the team, make decisions. You guys are the experts. You tell me how that should be. And so it was kind of letting go of not having the ability to understand every single, channel and depth. But then also just ensuring that, was collaborative to make quick, good decisions, and trusting the team for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. I think that's a really important point, is that I don't think a lot of people realize in agency that, I would bet my house on our head of SEO. If he tells me it needs to be my way to get the outcome for the client, then I'm trusting Daniel implicitly. Whereas I agree in a non-agency environment, I think that would be more of a hierarchical step up, where it would go through multiple levels to get to board sign off. We don't have the luxury of time to have that kind of governance. There's governance in the way we do our business. Of course there is. But when it comes down to how we're solving this problem for a client and it needs to start immediately, we back completely the teams that we've hired to do that. And I don't have to get into the detail of that because I don't know it. That's not my area of expertise. So yeah, I think that's a really amazing point. One other question I was going to ask you is what do you think, as a leader in an agency environment, or any leader, what do you think the key core values are? I know you mentioned integrity and transparency, but maybe at a more personal level, why do you think you've succeeded in such a different environment from your background? Is that value-based? Is that your ability to learn and apply yourself and your skills in different ways? Like, I'd love to know what you think that would be.
Gosh, that's a good question. I think I've had those values in business for a really long time. And I think, I need the business that I work within or for to hold the same values, right? For it to work really well. I can learn stuff, so that's, it's not necessarily hard. But I think as long as the value set is aligned, which it is for me, obviously with Overdose, then that kind of is the core of everything that you do. And if they're aligned, you're really in a really happy place with working towards what's next. You can take on more challenges, you can take on tougher things, work through the ups and the downs that do happen within business, and not and feel in harmony with those things, even though they are potentially challenging from time to time. So I think the values of the business and the values of yourself and how you operate in business, I think need to be really, really quite aligned in order to kind of make it easier, even through any of the potentially, challenging times. What about yourself? What do you think?
I completely agree. Because the agency I was at before I started my own agency with Martin, the values didn't align with mine personally. And that creates a really jarring position to be in, because the ownership level, I simply didn't respect, the value system at all. And that drove me to, leave and go out on my own alongside Martin. So, I think when you talk to a lot of other people and they've come from an agency background, I do feel the feedback on us is that they do feel that there's value in the leadership. And I think that that's really important, because you can't expect people to put in the hard yards, have the grit and determination that we need to get the results for clients in an increasingly competitive landscape with multiple global factors at the moment. The grit factor for me is absolutely essential, and you can't expect people to be gritty for you if they don't align with your values and respect what you're doing. It simply doesn't work like that. And so I think that's one of our big future challenges as a business, as we've grown to a higher headcount, is expressing that value system and having that connectivity with a higher volume of people so that they feel at home, they feel aligned, and they feel safe, because that's going to be our biggest challenge. Robbie. Hi, Robert. You guys keep up pace of growing teams' accountabilities and desire to grow into new roles in a relatively flat structure and at the speed that people want now, especially with the demand of these skill sets in a competitive market? Great question. Jo, do you want to answer it first?
It's a constant challenge. It is a constant challenge. Two things, I think, with that. It's a constant challenge to keep in contact, right, and keep connected. I think that's always in any business, and especially as we are fully flexi and we've got a number of offices around and people located around the world, right? So that connectivity is always a challenge. So we just have to really make it a priority. And then, when in terms of growing teams' accountabilities, it comes back to the leaders in the business, the leaders of each office or each particular discipline, really having the same, us being aligned with what we're doing. And then being aligned, and feeding that down to the team. I like the fact that we've actually got a flat structure, because it means that there's access to everybody. Now, you can pick up the phone and call Paul, no problem. Pick up the phone and call Coxie, no problem, right? So we've got lots of access to people, and that flat structure actually helps us, because it means that the information's been disseminated across the business to keep us in line and to keep us accountable. It's not always perfect. No business is always perfect. But as soon as we go, we need to change that, or we need to plug a little gap there, whatever it is, there's some really quick action around that.
Yeah. And I think we've had to become a little bit less flat than we were, say, 2 years ago. And I think one of the big challenges, as we've put in roles like, marketing leads, project management leads, SEO managers, we have added some depth to some of those service areas that we didn't historically have. And there's a couple of things about that, because I love that we've done that, and I think it's made everyone's lives easier, whilst also giving a path for growth for staff. The one thing I would say I've had to be very aware of, and I've had this feedback with people I know really well and previous directors that used to be in the business, is the commentary that coming into the leadership group can be daunting, and it can be tricky because you've all had such a long period of time together. Every director in the Melbourne business is original Melbourne Overdose team members. We have lived and breathed the whole thing for the last 4.5 years all together. And so I do really acknowledge that I think a year ago even was a hard environment to come into, because we had such a rhythm and such a connectivity. Opening that up and breaking down the accountability layers, to Rob's question, has become really potent in how successful that flow on of leaders do. And, you're always going to have a certain level of staff attrition, because you cannot promote everybody, and we do want to keep an element of flatness and accessibility, like you said, because without that, then we've lost the soul of who we are as a business, in my opinion. But the connectivity, the change in working environments, we've got staff in Adelaide, Yeppoon, Melbourne, Brisbane. It's not just in the 3 locations that we have. There are people working in other remote cities or regional places of Australia, which I'm all for, but it does create a barrier. It does become a bigger challenge to get that genuine connectivity that you have when you're physically together. And that has been a pandemic-led issue. I love the work from home balance and the flexible options. I really do. It's made me more productive, undoubtedly. But I still, I was in the office yesterday. I'm going to go in again this afternoon. I never feel as good as I do after a day at the office.
Yeah,
and that's a fact. And I think a lot of people have forgotten the dopamine hit you get by being around your friends. There's a lot of us are friends. We've known each other a long time. The humor, the enthusiasm, the youthfulness. I adore all of that. It's why I've choose to be at Overdose. So yeah, I think it's definitely a challenge and a great question from Rob, definitely.
That's goody from Rob. Oh, what is the most serious problem that you have been facing in your role? Oh, that's a goodie.
Whoa, you want to say that? Yeah, sure, I can take that. I think at the moment, currently, it's definitely the global economic situation. I think there's a lot of clients that had some really boom growth elements or years in that pandemic phase, and to sort of see certain areas start to flatten and us have to look at new and different ways to engage with customers and look for that growth and drive the profitability. I definitely think that's one area that the uncertainty in the global situation has been something I take quite seriously, and it's something that I'm having very regular conversations with our clients about. I do think it's a short-term uncertainty, and the work and the groundwork and the consistency that you put in, majority of businesses will overcome that. But I think it would be remiss of me to think it's going to be smooth sailing and the years previous are going to be the same as what's ahead. So kind of if I'm to think, in the current sense, definitely that's one thing that I do. It does keep me up a little bit in terms of careful consideration on how we prepare for that.
Yeah, I share that answer with you. That would be the response that I would give as well. It's just the economy at the moment is challenging across the globe. Clients are finding it challenging where, it's everywhere. It's everywhere you look. So I think, it's important for us to acknowledge that. We can't ignore it, right? You have to acknowledge it. And what do we do as a business to pull together and ensure that we are working through it as much, as much and as transparently as we can, with our team. So, it's definitely that. Martin, given your time over, would you do it all again? 100%.
I feel that's pointed at me to an extent as well as my original business partner.
He's probably
look, no, undoubtedly, I'd do it again. Our business was acquired. I think we met Todd on a video call, and 4 weeks later we'd moved into the Cremorne office with Jason. It was very fast. And I can categorically, hand on heart, say I'd do it again. It's been a wild ride. It completely changed my life, and for the most part, completely for the positive. We work really hard. It's not a come in and coast along kind of job, right, Jodi? And I think the intensity at which we've had to go for a sustained period of time, sometimes you do wake up and you're like, can I do this again? Or, but I think I'd be particularly very lost without being at Overdose. And I've loved it.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah.
And I guess that just sort of leads into, I guess, a curious question from me to you, which is, we talked about what is it that keeps you hooked into Overdose? What is it you love? What is it that keeps you going, yep, I'm up for a great day, I'm up for another day, and I'm keep going?
It's definitely a few factors for me, and those that know me well, I'd say number one's definitely winning new clients. I still love pitching, and I love the exhilaration of getting on a call and the client going, yeah, we're going with Overdose. We loved what you presented and we can't wait to start working with you. That for me is very addictive and a very big part of what I love about Overdose. Secondly, the people, and I say that from a human factor, but also a talent factor. I'm continually, and this is not bullshit or blowing smoke up people's proverbials, but I genuinely am in awe of the talent that we have within our team. And so the ability to hear that in action. Sometimes I just sit in the office and listen to what they're saying, but then the human factor, I think there's been times where we've all had to show great care and love towards each other for different areas. And I think Overdose has that in spades. Like, I remember when you'd look to acquire a new business or, hire someone, and we always had this no dickhead policy, and you'd vote based on, are they a dickhead or are they a good person? And I think we've managed really beautifully with as a system as simple as, are you a dickhead or not? And it's resulted in me getting to go into work or jump online every day and work with no dickheads. And I don't think there'd be many people that could say that, but I can say that with complete honesty.
Yeah. I'm actually very similar. For me, it's the team. So I love the team. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something. So I go home, gosh, I learned that today. And that's actually that's a lot, right? There's so much going on in the business. There's so much knowledge and so many great people and great conversations that to go home every day and have learned something, I think is huge, right? So yeah, that's it for me. Tegan, what are you proudest of from 2022, and what are you most looking forward to in 2023?
Another great one. For me, I'm probably most proud of, we've done a couple of times throughout the year where we've gone and done check-ins with clients and asked for feedback, and some of the responses that we've had have just been really beautiful and lovely, and it reminds you of why we work as hard as we do on behalf of our clients. So that for me, and and keeping a relatively consistent business performance for Melbourne in a year of what's been quite adverse conditions. So they be the things I'm most proud of. For 2023, I'm most excited to see all the work Jodi and I have been banging together on in the background for the last sort of 8 to 10 weeks really take flight in 2023. That certainly excites me enormously, because I think there's a lot. We've got a really strong vision for next year, and I think we've had to do a lot of groundwork to set us up for success in a year we're not 100% sure what's going to happen. So that's my answer. What about you?
Again, quite similar. So for 2022, I guess I'm most proud of the way that the team have pulled together in some quite challenging economic times, right? We've pulled together and delivered some outstanding results. And that, to your point, the clients have, the comments that you get saying, thank you so much for an amazing site went live, or thank you so much for doing this in marketing, or thank you so much for solving this problem, whatever it is. And it takes a lot for someone to say, hey, that was amazing. That was a really cool job that you guys have done. And we've had a lot of that this year. And I think, the team have had lots of challenges. It has been, quite an interesting year. So I think that's the thing, when I take a step back and I reflect on this year, that's the thing that I'm most proud of, is the resilience and the grit and the outstanding results that the guys have brought in. And 2023, actually, I'm looking forward to some of the same things. Again, I think we're up for, a bit of a challenging year from a global perspective, but I'm looking forward to seeing how the team, again, are resilient, work through it. I see their growth, to see how people are moving forward in their careers. And I guess from my perspective, it is, like you said, it's solidifying some of the work that we've been doing over the last few weeks, and just seeing the business end up in 2023 in another really strong position.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that were amazing questions. That's the most questions I've ever gotten in OD and Chill, which is great.
Yeah,
we barely had to go through any of our own, which is wonderful. I think on that note, Jodi, we will wrap up with finishing on how excited we are for 2023. I think we're both pretty keen for a Christmas break and a few wines and G&Ts over the break to come back fresh in June. But I wanted to sincerely thank you for all your friendship and support for particularly the last couple of months, but throughout your whole time at Overdose. I think you're an absolute powerhouse, and I've loved chatting with you today.
It's been so fun talking with you, and I have utmost respect for you. I think you're a fantastic leader. And I've got another question. And I thank you for everything. Todd, who got the best Movember Mo in your office? Got to be you, Todd. Got to be you.
I mean, I have to say you. I don't think anyone in Melbourne's doing it, or someone's going to. Jason often attempts it, but as you know, he's got a pretty average ability to grow a beard or a mustache.
We'll post some pictures for everybody. But Laura, honestly, sincerely, thank you. You are fabulous to work with. It's awesome.
Thank you, Jodi. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy Cyber Weekend. Thank you.